This is live from New Delhi. You're watching DT India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and coming up in the next 30 minutes. Relief for Ukraine as US President Donald Trump talks peace, appreciates Zelensky's willingness to sign minerals deal with America. Canada lodges complaint with World Trade Organization against the United States over President Trump's unjustified tariff hike. And in a post-budget webinar, Prime Minister Narendra Modi says the vision of investment in people stand on three pillars: education, skill and healthcare. US President Donald Trump delivered a triumphant address to Congress on Tuesday, highlighting his string of bold policy moves that have reshaped America's foreign relations, triggered trade disputes and key allies, and also significantly reduced the federal workforce, all within his first 6 weeks in office. At 1 hour and 40 minutes, it was the longest ever such address.
America is back.
With these words, US President Donald Trump began his first address to a joint session of Congress after taking office. He didn't stop there. He vowed to plant the American flag on Mars.
We are going to conquer the vast frontiers of science, and we are going to lead humanity into space and plant the American flag on the planet Mars and even far beyond.
Much like his 2024 campaign, Trump used Tuesday's speech to talk about securing the US-Mexico border and the executive orders he issued, including deploying military members to the area.
I declared a national emergency on our southern border, and I deployed the U.S. military and Border Patrol to repel the invasion of our country. And what a job they've done. As a result, illegal border crossings last month were by far the lowest ever recorded, ever.
He even extended the offer of joining the US to the citizens of Greenland and said, one way or the other, we're going to get it. As time and again, he promised to take over Greenland and the Panama Canal.
Great job. And I also have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. We strongly support your right to determine your own future. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America. We need Greenland for national security and even international security, and we're working with everybody involved to try and get it. But we need it really for international world security.
Trump also announced his plans to implement reciprocal tariffs in the near future on several countries. The US will raise its tariff rate for goods from another country to whatever that country's levies on US products from April 2nd. Appreciating Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Trump said he received a letter from Zelensky agreeing to come to the negotiating table to strike a peace deal in Ukraine.
I received an important letter from President Zelensky of Ukraine. The letter reads, Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainians, he said. My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. We do really value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence. Regarding the agreement on minerals and security, Ukraine is ready to sign it at any time that is convenient for you.
In all, US President Donald Trump's address to Congress was a characteristic blend of triumphalism, policy pronouncements, and cultural warfare. Bureau Report, DD India.
Meanwhile, Denmark's foreign minister has sharply reacted to President Trump's overtures on Greenland, stressing that it was a positive development that the US president acknowledged the island's right to self-determination. Rasmussen said Denmark and Greenland had a common interest with the United States with regard to security in the Arctic, while Denmark Defense Minister has dismissed US President Trump's vow to take over Greenland one way or the other in a speech to the Congress.
First of all, I would like to draw the attention to the fact that he said we respect the Greenlandics' right to self-determination, and that, I think, was the most important part of that speech. And I am very optimistic about what will be a Greenlandic decision about this. They want to loosen their ties to Denmark. We are working on that to have a more equal relationship.
Greenland's Prime Minister on Wednesday hit back at President Donald Trump's pledge to take the Arctic territory one way or the other, insisting that islanders did not see their future with the United States or even with Denmark. Mute Egner rejected Trump's expansionist ambitions to annex the sparsely populated but mineral-rich and strategically placed island in a partisan address to the U.S. Congress in Washington. Egner wrote on a Facebook post, and I quote, "We don't want to be Americans or Danes either. We are Greenlanders. The Americans and their leader must understand that." Trump offered only passing lines on world affairs in his speech, focusing on his domestic goals like rounding up undocumented immigration and slashing government spending. Also in response to the US President Trump's move of imposing 25% tariff on imports from territories, Canada has filed a complaint with the WTO against the US over President's dramatic tariff increase. The move has clearly not gone well with Canadian administration, and taking to social media, Canadian ambassador to the WTO, Nadia Theodore, appealed for WTO consultations with the US government with regards to the US tariffs that Canada calls unjustified. Theodore added the US decision left Canada with no choice. A WTO official confirmed that Canada initiated dispute proceedings against the US at the WTO on the additional tariffs shortly after the tariffs on Canadian goods took effect. Prime Minister Trudeau accused Trump of trying to cause the collapse of Canada's economy to make it easier for the US to annex his country. Moving on, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is scrambling to repair his relations with the US after a tense meeting with President Donald Trump last week. Ukrainian leader called the clash regrettable on social media. He wrote that the meeting in Washington at the White House on Friday did not go the way it was supposed to be, quote unquote. Zelensky also expressed his willingness to sign a contentious minerals deal which would grant US access to Ukrainian minerals in exchange for military aid. In all this, Russia has expressed a positive stance on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's openness to negotiations over the ongoing conflict. However, the Kremlin remains uncertain about how such talks could proceed given Kyiv's legal restrictions on engaging with Moscow. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov pointed out that Ukraine still has a legal ban on negotiations with Russia. The restriction stems from a 2022 decree by Zelensky, which explicitly ruled out talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
It is positive. The question is who to negotiate with. As of now, the Ukrainian president is still legally prohibited from negotiating with the Russian side. Therefore, the overall approach is positive, but the nuances have not changed yet.
Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko has offered to host peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, suggesting that US officials could also be involved. His remarks came in an interview on Wednesday. Lukashenko emphasized the need for negotiations, proposing Belarus as a neutral venue. He highlighted the proximity of Kyiv to the Belarusian border, stressing that discussions could take place quickly and efficiently.
We need to negotiate. If you want, come here. It's not far, 200 kilometers from the Belarusian border to Kyiv, maybe 500 kilometers, half an hour by plane. Come, we'll sit here, calmly, without noise, without shouting, we'll reach an agreement. Therefore, tell Trump I'm waiting for him along with Putin and Zelensky. We'll sit down and calmly negotiate if you want to reach an agreement.
Leaders of the Germany's conservatives and social democrats who are in negotiations to form a coalition after a national election last month announced proposals on Tuesday to set up a €500 billion fund for infrastructure and defense spending. Addressing a press conference, Leader of the Christian Democratic Union, Friedrich Merz, said that both parties would submit a motion to the Bundestag, lower house of parliament, the German parliament, next week to amend the constitution. The motion aims that defense expenditure above 1% of the economic output is exempted from the debt brake. The move comes after US President Donald Trump has frozen military aid to Ukraine after a clash with President Volodymyr Zelensky last week.
That is why we want to set up a credit-financed emergency program, a special fund of 500 billion euros for the next 10 years, from which these necessary investments will be made. We assume that this special fund will also trigger private investment on a large scale.
Staying with Germany, the EU warns that US tariffs to Canada and Mexico threaten economic stability and risk disrupting global trade. And the bloc is also urging Washington to reverse the course. Joining us with more is DW correspondent Chiponda Chimelu in Berlin. Hi Chiponda, now what more details can you share with us about the response to these tariffs in Europe, and how prepared is EU to respond and deal with the situation?
Thanks for having me. Well, here in Europe, there's concern about supply chains and global trade. And the European Commission said that the tariffs on Canada and Mexico, which took effect this week, threaten supply chains, investment flows, and economic stability. Now, both Canada and Mexico are economic partners of the EU. And last month, the bloc announced that it would strengthen trade relations with Mexico, where European manufacturers, especially car makers, have production facilities. Now, while the current tariffs, of course, target the US's neighbors, they are also hurting European companies. And tariffs could cost the industry, the auto industry especially, alone billions. Sometimes car parts travel across the US-Mexico border several times during production. But of course, there's also something else that Brussels is looking with concern to, and that is Trump's 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum exports to the United States. Now, those are scheduled to take effect on March 12, and they will affect European exporters. Brussels is, of course, planning a response.
So in that way, what about Europe's economy? How resilient can we expect it to be?
Well, before I get into that, it is worth noting that the EU, actually, the US is the leading destination for exports, and the United States is the second biggest source of imports to the European Union. So there is a lot of harm that both economies can do to each other with tariffs. And that is why we've seen European policymakers stress that point and focus on potential negotiations. But that is, of course, something that could be changing. There is that disastrous exchange between US President Trump and Ukraine's President Zelensky in the Oval Office last Friday. And of course, the White House's announcement this week that it would pause all military aid to Ukraine. Now, if Washington piles more pressure on the bloc with tariffs, we could very well see the EU deploy its anti-coercion instrument. Now, that is, of course, a tool with a so-called trade bazooka that would have a wide range of retaliatory measures. And those include quotas, tariffs, and foreign investment restrictions. And it was created after the first Trump administration, but it has never been used.
In other news, Israel's incoming military chief of staff, Eyal Zamir, was appointed at a ceremony in Tel Aviv on Wednesday after the resignation of outgoing Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi over the military's failure to prevent Hamas's October 7 deadly rampage in 2023. Zamir was promoted to the rank of Lieutenant General and became Israel's 24th military chief. The handover ceremony was an event which was attended by Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister of Israel Katz. The change of command comes as a standoff over the fragile ceasefire in Gaza increased the risk of a resumption of fighting without an agreement to bring home the rest of the hostages still held by Hamas. Israeli Defense Minister Katz said that forces could resume fighting if 59 hostages are not released soon. Well, for the first time ever, US space agency NASA used GPS on the moon, and this means that for the first time signals from the global navigation satellite systems were received and tracked on the moon. NASA and the Italian Space Agency made history on March 3rd when the lunar GNSS receiver experiment became the first technology demonstration to acquire and track Earth-based navigation signals on the moon's surface. The LUGRE payload's success in lunar orbit and on the surface indicates that signals from the GNSS can be received and tracked at the moon. These results mean NASA's Artemis mission or other exploration missions could benefit from these signals to accurately and autonomously determine their position, their velocity and time. And still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Coming up next on the other side, Indian government clears Kedarnath to ropeway to cut travel time from 8 to 9 hours to 36 minutes. And Australia's star batter Steve Smith calls time from ODIs, announces retirement after semi-final loss to India.
This week on Defense Dynamics, the geopolitics in Europe is undergoing a major shift after the Trump-Zelensky clash. How will this affect the continent's security and alliances? As Europe rethinks its defense posture, India-EU relations take a center stage. What does this growing partnership mean for global security? Meanwhile, the Indian Air Force faces a critical fighter jet shortage. The Indian Air Force chief warns of a serious gap in squadron. How can India build up this deficiency? And in a bold move, Bharat Forge claims that it can handle India's artillery needs. Is the private sector ready to replace foreign imports like that the K9 Vajra? Tune in this Wednesday at 8 p.m. IST only on DD India.
You're watching DD India Live. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and now let's get you some more news and updates. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the post-budget webinar on employment via video conferencing on Wednesday. Addressing the gathering, Prime Minister highlighted that since 2014, the government has provided skill training to over 3 crore youth. The Prime Minister mentioned the upgrade of 1,000 ITIs and the establishment of 5 centers of excellence. He emphasized the goal of equipping youth with training that meets the needs of the industries.
जन भागीदारी का ये मॉडल बहुत रेयर होता है और मुझे खुशी है कि लगातार प्रतिवर्ष इस एक मंथन के कार्यक्रम को बल भी मिल रहा है, उत्साह से लोग भी जुड़ रहे हैं और हर एक को लगता है कि बजट के पूर्व जितनी बातें हम करते हैं उससे ज्यादा महत्वपूर्ण बातें बजट के बाद इंप्लीमेंटेशन में उपयोगी होती हैं।
India's Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs or CCEA has approved development of 12.9 kilometer long ropeway project from Sonprayag to Kedarnath in the North Indian state of Uttarakhand. The ropeway project will be a boon to the pilgrims visiting Kedarnath as it would reduce travel time in one direction from about 8 to 9 hours to about 36 minutes. The CCEA also approved development of 12.4 kilometer long ropeway project from Govindghat to Hemkund Sahib Ji in Uttarakhand as well.
चार धाम में बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण धाम है केदारनाथ धाम। यहाँ एक 12.9 किलोमीटर का रोपवे बनाने का आज फैसला लिया गया है। करीब 4,081 करोड़ 4,081 करोड़ रुपीस का ये प्रोजेक्ट होगा। जो बड़ा फायदा होगा वो ये होगा कि जो आज 8 से 9 घंटे की जर्नी है वो 36 मिनट्स की जर्नी हो जाएगी। दूसरा प्रोजेक्ट इसी कड़ी में है हेमकुंड साहिब का रोपवे। हेमकुंड साहिब की जो बहुत बड़ी एक महत्वपूर्ण स्थान है हमारी संस्कृति में, ऐसा केदारनाथ जी में लगता है कि बहुत लोगों को जाने में सुविधा होगी। यहाँ पर हेमकुंड साहिब में भी जाने को लोगों को बहुत सुविधा होगी।
A high-level Dutch delegation, including companies, technical universities and government officials, are participating in the Semiconductor Summit in Gujarat to explore strategic partnerships. NXP, a significant Dutch company, is also expanding an investment in India, employing around 4,000 people. The Netherlands is also supporting talent development through initiatives like Virtual Semiconductor School. DD India spoke exclusively to the ambassador of Netherlands to India, Marisa Gerards, for more.
From the spice trade relationship to a very robust bilateral trade relationship, as well as a very robust relationship and cooperation in the technological sector, the India-Netherlands partnership has come a long way. And to talk more on this directly from the Semiconductor conference here in Gujarat, we are joined in by the ambassador of Netherlands to India. Thank you so much, ma'am, for talking to us. Ambassador Marisa, very importantly, we are here at the Semiconductor Summit. We have heard that there's a huge Dutch delegation that is very enthusiastic about it. What's in store? What are you expecting over the next 2 days?
Yes. Well, we're here with a high-level delegation from the Netherlands. We have both companies on board who are active in the semiconductor ecosystem. We have people from the technical universities, 2 professors joined our delegation, and we have people from government. So we have colleagues from the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Foreign Affairs as well. And we're here because we value our very strong relationship that we have between India and the Netherlands in trade and investment, but we're also really trusted partners, so we're also looking to expand our relationship to a strategic level.
When we actually say Netherlands, we definitely know it's home to a number of global companies which are big players in the semiconductor sector. When we're talking about India's footprints now have expanded quite a bit in this same sector. Are we expecting more investments from the companies of Netherlands like NXP and other companies, more R&D setups or more training setups to be here in India?
Yes, I think so. We are now exploring a MOU, government to government. That's always important to strengthen the relationship. We see that there are some companies who are already very active in your country, like NXP. Yeah. I know that NXP is really doubling down on their investment. You should ask them yourself and see and get the numbers from them. Already now, I think 4,000 people are working here in India, and I think they're about to double it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Ambassador. It was great speaking to you, and especially getting insights on what Netherlands has to offer in terms of the semiconductor industry, in the semiconductor sector, where India is steadfasting, and especially skilling, employment, and much more is happening in the sector. With my camera person Lakshman Rajput, this is Meghna Dev for DD India from Gandhinagar, Gujarat.
The Japanese delegation held bilateral with Indian government at the Jaipur International Conference on 3R economy on Wednesday. The high-level delegation is headed by Vice Minister of Environment. DD India's Vishal Baristo caught up with the Japanese minister on the Indo-Japanese collaboration in making Earth a safer planet.
We are here at the International Conference in Jaipur. We are discussing 3R economy. I have with me the Vice Minister for Environment from Japan. Let's talk to him and find out. Just had a meeting, bilateral meeting with India. So what are the takeaways of that meeting?
This forum will create the very good opportunity to strengthen the bilateral cooperation on 3R and circular economy, particularly in the proper waste management infrastructure in India. So Japan will provide the various support, technical, financial, or political, other support, and I think we can strengthen our cooperation.
When it comes to aid from Japan, what kind of aid can look forward from Japan?
Currently, both governments has very close and intensive discussions on joint crediting mechanism, which provide financial cooperation, exchanging the carbon crediting.
So there you heard from the Japanese minister, both countries share a very close relationship and both countries are working very closely towards realizing this dream of 3R economy, especially in the Asia Pacific region. with cameraman Gaurav Giri in Jaipur. This is Vishal Baristo for DD India.
India's Processing Industries Minister Chirag Paswan inaugurated the 39th edition of the Ahar International Food and Hospitality Fair in New Delhi. The 5-day event running till 8th of March is organized by the India Trade Promotion Organization and the Food Processing Industries Ministry. Ahar 2025 showcased a wide range of products and services including processed foods, organic products, beverages, spices and bakery items along with innovative technologies. Well, let's get you some sports news quickly. Australia's star batsman Steve Smith has called it curtains down or has announced his retirement from ODI on Wednesday. The middle order batter's final appearance in ODIs came in the form of Champions Trophy semi-final against India in Dubai, in which he top scored for Australia with 73 in a losing match. Though the 35-year-old batter featured in 170 ODIs, scored 5,800 runs at an average of 43.28 with a strike rate of 86.96. He has 12 tons to his credit and 35 half centuries to his name. He finished his career as the 12th highest run getter for Australia in ODIs. Meanwhile, New Zealand have posted formidable 362 for the loss of 6 wickets against South Africa in the second semi-final of the Champions Trophy in Lahore on Wednesday. Kane Williamson and Rachin Ravindra slammed centuries to take New Zealand to a commanding position. Williamson was dismissed on 102 by Wian Mulder, while Kajio Rabada got rid of Rachin Ravindra for 108. The pair added over 160 runs for the second wicket after the Kiwis opted to bat. For South Africa, Lunginigiri was pick of the bowlers with 3 scalps, while Rabada bagged 2 wickets. Both teams are eyeing a place in the Sunday's final berth against India in Dubai. Well, that's going to be a cracker of a final. And with that, it's time to wrap up this edition of DD India Live. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live. On the other side, my colleague Deepika will update you with all the news coming in from the world of sports, particularly cricket. Stay with us. Thanks.